welcome to this edition of Political Smackdown. This is an exciting day. This is our first show in this new facility here at the community college, and we are the first show to be taped in this new facility. So we had a ribbon cutting yesterday, and I think Tim's going to show some pictures of that before we get started. And there you see Dot Roark, the matriarch of Cleveland Community College. And there's Roger. Andy and Mike. Great, good. All right, and our usual crew is here except for one. Roger Harris is filling in today for Andy Dedman, but we have Mike Philbeck and Wes Westmoreland to my right, and I'm Betsy Wells. Not only is it an exciting day here at the community college with all that's going on with this new studio, there's something that I really wanted to talk about before we got into politics, and that's a little bit about the history of our county. One of our Cleveland County's native sons, musician Earl Scruggs, was highlighted in this month's edition of our state magazine, and the whole thing is called Sounds of Home. There was a 10-page article starting on page 114, Ripe for the Pickings, and it shows pictures of Earl, his home, Shelby, and Cleveland County. Special emphasis is on the Earl Scruggs Center here in downtown Shelby at the old courthouse. I knew the name of Earl Scruggs from growing up in a mountain singing family of pickers and in Ashe County before I even knew where Cleveland County was. It flattened Scruggs, and then there was the TV show, The Beverly Hillbillies. It was very popular when I went to college, and everybody thought that since I was from the mountains, that's how we acted, needless to say. But gentlemen, you three are natives of Cleveland County. What do you say about Earl Scruggs? All right, Roger, will you start?
Well, full disclosure, I serve as chair of the Earl Scruggs Center Board, so I was really pleased with this article. Earl Scruggs is known the world over for his legendary banjo and bluegrass music. There's a great story that we tell at the Scruggs Center about how he developed his three-finger style of picking. Earl Scruggs Center is really a treasure for our whole community. People come here from all over the world, all over the country. We have monthly concerts this summer. We had a couple of events of Picking on the Square. There's an educational outreach to all the students in every Cleveland County Schools elementary school. And a lot of the work of the Scruggs Center is not just in that center, it's keeping bluegrass and mountain music alive. The Earl Scruggs Music Festival actually begins today at the Equestrian Center in Mill Spring. Tony Triska is on the lineup, Allison Krause, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Dale McCurry, so just some really top-notch musicians, and that begins today. The recently purchased home place, which is featured in the article, we're in the process of restoring that property, making it look like it did in the 1930s when Earl Scruggs lived there. And it's not just about Earl Scruggs, but that homes like that tell the story of people in the 1930s in our community who worked the farms and then went to the cotton mills and worked there. So be sure to get a copy of the September Our State magazine. It's a fantastic article, Betsy.
All right, and they say in the magazine that Scruggs did for old-time Appalachian banjo what Jimi Hendrix did later for rock and roll guitar. Mike, you were mayor of Shelby during this time that Earl came around when he was alive.
It was going on about the time I left. It was being talked about, and it was somewhat, if y'all recall, putting the Scruggs Center in the old courthouse was somewhat controversial at the time around the community, but it has turned out to be a great place for Cleveland County, right in the heart of the city. Betsy, you only said one thing wrong. It's not in downtown Shelby. It's in uptown Shelby.
It's uptown Shelby.
The thing I'll always remember, I guess, the most about Mr. Scruggs is when I was much younger and the Beverly Hillbillies came out and it was such a hit. And of course, the theme song was done by Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt, if I recall correctly.
All right, Wes?
Well, no question, Earl was truly a pioneer with the three-finger style picking, but he experimented so much with other instruments. I remember one time he was doing a concert in Shelby, it being mentioned that he had a drum kit, and bluegrass couldn't have drums. It was just one of those rules. Bela Fleck, who's probably the most innovative since Earl acknowledged as much when he played in Shelby. But I want to take a little bit different spin on it. What does this matter to us here in Cleveland County? Well, Cleveland County last year had the highest increase in visitor spending in the state of North Carolina. There's a lot that contributes to that, but I don't think there's any question that this was built on the back of Earl Scruggs, and along with Don Gibson, we've created a destination for many
Absolutely.
in music. Now adding Earl's Home Place just adds to that, and you couple that with the World Series, Cleveland County Fair, and new amphitheater in Boiling Springs, all the events in Kings Mountain. There's a lot to be proud of here. And a lot of this is built on the back of the Earl Scruggs name. And thank you to the Earl Scruggs Center. And that truly does teach Cleveland County history
Right.
through the lens of Earl Scruggs maybe, but it's far more than just about one man.
Right.
And it does impact all of us, I think, in a very positive way.
I'm
And-
glad to see Mr. Harris is doing what he's doing, and I'm grateful he's willing to. And I'm glad you found something that didn't carry the controversy of your school board years.
Well, I'm pleased as well.
Well,
Even
and
a blind squirrel.
And don't forget that for those of us that remember the Bonnie and Clyde movie, that Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt did the music for it too. And even after they split up as a duo, he went on and formed. He played music all of his life. In fact, the article says that he wrote a note that said, "Analyzing my life, I suppose one way I would describe it, I was born addicted to picking." And that certainly did it. Well, we're just lucky in Cleveland County to have the musicians and to have the people, Roger,
Right.
that give their time on the board to try to improve the center.
It's a fantastic board and a great concert
Yes.
this weekend.
All right, and don't forget, now where is he really from?
He is from Boiling Springs is where he's
Or
from.
Flint Hill.
Flint Hill,
is
yeah,
Flint Hill, yes, all right.
But you touched on one other thing I
Yeah.
want to follow up with, whether it's the music at Mill Springs or in town at the center or the series, the fair. That's an awful lot of volunteers
It is.
that are putting their time and effort and talent into making this where we see this growth that we've seen in Cleveland County.
And like most small museums, this one could not operate without the volunteers.
Right.
And so for those of you that have not been to the Earl Scruggs Center and you've got a weekend, this is a holiday weekend coming up, hope maybe you could take time and go.
And one day a week's free?
Saturday.
Saturday's
Used to
a
be Wednesday,
free
but
day.
now it's Saturday.
So it's
Saturdays are
Saturday?
free.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so moving on now. News from the Shelby City Council. Justin Merritt has been named the new city manager to replace Rick Howell, who will retire at the end of December. Mr. Merritt is not a stranger to Shelby government. He's currently serving as Assistant County Manager for Catawba County. Mike, you're our expert on Shelby City government. Start us off about this announcement.
Well, I do know Mr. Merritt. I don't know Mr. Merritt really well, but there's a picture of him. But he worked in Shelby. He came here as Director of Finance in, I believe, 2012, and he was named Assistant City Manager in Shelby in 2020, and then in 2023, he took a job as an Assistant County Manager in Catawba County. And I knew then that there had been some hope that it would work out so that when the current manager, Mr. Howell, retired, I knew at least some of the members of council and the mayor thought Justin would be a good future city manager. He's a very bright guy. I don't know him well. I know him well enough that I had his number, was able to call him and congratulate him when I saw it. But he's a Rotarian, and here's the real kicker. He's never moved from Shelby. He still lives in Shelby. And so he doesn't have to move. What is really unusual about this is that the city council and mayor felt strongly enough about it that they've named him city manager, and he's accepted 4 full months before the current manager retires. So I think it'll probably be a great fit. He comes here already knowing the city from the inside from 2012 to 2023. So congratulations to Mr. Merritt and to the Shelby council and mayor for their ability to be able to get this done.
Wes, you live inside the city limits. What do you have to say about it?
Well, like Mike, I have met him, but I don't know him, certainly don't know him well. I like the fact that he comes out of finance. I think that's a positive thing. I'm glad to know, Mike, that he still lives in the city of Shelby, so he sees the impact that this not going to revenue neutral had on Shelby, and so hopefully he can help us get our tax rates under control at some point. But look forward to having Justin back in this position, and again, someone coming from the inside that has a relationship, I think is a positive thing.
Okay, Roger?
You know, Rick Howe is leaving us in December, leaving the city of Shelby. I know you had a program with that as a topic recently. He was at the ribbon cutting yesterday, so he's still on the job and is still working. I am pleased that that Justin Merritt is going to be coming back to Shelby in that capacity. He was a finance director, and a lot of that job has to do with financing and accounting and budget, and he seems to have a solid track record in those fields, and I think it's going to be an asset. He has degrees from NC State and Campbell University, so a well-educated man with a lot of good experience. I know our voters recognize that Shelby, like most places, have a council manager form of government. It's very much like the superintendent and board of education. The voters select the city council and the mayor, and then the city council makes policy, but the manager is the one that does that day-to-day operation of managing the city and moving forward and executing the policy that the city council made. So welcome home, Mr. Merritt, and we wish you tremendous success.
And I think it says something about the fact that he stayed here in Shelby, and that the councilman and the mayor thought so much of him that they looked down the road that he might want to come back. And you know, it certainly saves headache in the city council of trying to find someone and to fill the position. And so he will come on board, Mike, January 1st.
January 1 is what the news release said from the city. And I'll tell you, Betsy, Shelby has been in a strong position on managers for a long time. Shelby has only had, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 managers, I think, since its inception in 1967.
Well,
pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
There's some counties go through 2 or 3 in a year.
And we read about them too in the
Yeah.
newspaper and being in lawsuits and things like that when county managers. And then too, you get some county managers that maybe there's just not a fit for the city or for the county, and this would be for the city. Like you know, we had that situation in Kings Mountain, and I think Shelby will be very lucky to get this young man back. Plus, he's young. How old is he?
I do not know his age, but he is not nearly as old as I am.
Well,
Not many of us are, Mike.
on that note, then we'll take a break and come back after the commercial for the rest of Political Smackdown. Welcome back to this edition of Political Smackdown. Again, we're in the new facility and we are the first show being taped. Now we go on to national news. President Trump has National Guard troops deployed to major cities in the United States, claiming their increase in these cities in crime statistics. First, it started in Los Angeles, then the city of Washington, and he says that Chicago is next. The crime statistics in these cities do not match his statements, and the National Guard soldiers are armed. They're just standing around. Some were just picking up trash. This is involving our military against the public, overruling the police forces in these cities. How do you explain it? What's next? Wes, begin.
Well, let's start with LA, since you mentioned that. The troops were sent to LA to protect federal buildings and federal employees, which is a legitimate use, particularly in the circumstances that we had in LA at the time. But what Trump is discussing now, Betsy, is the slippery slope that we mentioned on TV 2 weeks ago. State sovereignty must be respected. The governor should ask for troops if the governor feels the need for them. That said, Mike, the federal government does have a duty to protect Americans. And Betsy, we can talk about crime stats all day long. We can make them say what we want to from your perspective or from mine. The fact is, crime is out of control in many, if not most, major cities. This week in Chicago, there were 20 shootings and 6 murders. And we've come to accept that as some degree of normal. And I think it's time that we step up and do something. I think it should be done locally. I think voters should hold their elected officials responsible. Another concern that I have, are these cities going to become reliant on the federal government for police protection when they should be responsible? Every time the government starts doling out something, they start taking it out of the other pocket and spending it on other things. So I've got a lot of concerns about this, but I think it's certainly been a success in DC. That's constitutional. That should happen. And the mayor of Washington has been very pleased with the outcome.
Well, talking, when you put more people on the streets with armed weapons and things, I think I expect it to be a decrease. Roger, what do you think?
Well, I wish Mr. Trump had decided to use the National Guard on January 6, 2021.
Yes.
I wish Pelosi would have.
Yeah, when he sent his supporters to attack the U.S. Capitol and the death of a police officer and 174 other officers. But anyway, I agree with Wes in this respect. It does not matter what the statistics say. The reality is a lot of people just don't feel safe in a lot of our big cities and even small cities. There's dangerous places. We've all been to Washington, D.C. and big cities. There's dangerous places in every city and even in Shelby. There are places that you would not feel comfortable going to at night, and that's just the reality of where we are. But if the president, in my judgment, is serious about using troops to reduce crime in the United States, Washington's a different city and because it's a federal city. But beyond that, if you want to reduce crime, you send your troops to the places that have the highest crime. And Memphis, in Republican-controlled Tennessee, has the highest, most violent crime rate of any place in the country. Oakland, California, and Detroit, and Little Rock, and Baltimore round out that top 5. Well, 2 of those are in states controlled by Democrats, and 2 are in states controlled by Republicans.
But I bet none of them are in states where the major cities are controlled by Republicans.
Maybe so, maybe so. But we have, we've all been to the District of Columbia, and we've toured the sites, and we've been to the Lincoln Memorial and all that stuff. That's not where the crime is.
No.
There's not a lot of rape and murder going on in the street in front of the National Museum of Art. There are places in D.C. that does have very high crime, but that isn't where the troops are. The troops are in front of the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument and all that, and that seems to me that a lot of that, not exclusively, but a lot of that is performative, just to be there for the tourists so they can see it.
Well, the last murder they had, which has been 2 weeks now without, roughly, was 2 blocks from the White House.
That's right, in north of the White House, that northern part and eastern part. But, it seems to me if the nation's only convicted felon to sit in the Oval Office wanting to do something about violent crime, then what he needs to do is to partner with law enforcement, increase support for local law enforcement, figure out a way to deal with gun violence and weapons of war in the hands of crazy people, and work to provide resources for mental health. We need to do it the right way and not the put on a show for Fox Entertainment way. All
right, and Mike, what do you think?
Well, I've got a new nickname for Donald J. Trump.
Oh, this ought to be good.
He's Brer Rabbit.
Brer
Who just dared them to.
Don't throw me in the briar patch.
Put him in the briar patch. Trump is being supported by the people in Washington. I'm going to limit this to Washington now because Washington is different than the cities and the states, as I think Wes has noted.
Absolutely.
It is.
But in the 3 weeks since he had, this is an AI overview which had links to the articles which I looked at, but I just printed the overview this morning. At 6:56 a.m. I was doing my homework, Betsy. They have significantly decreased crime rates since the deployment of the National Guard, with overall violent crime down 22%, carjackings down 83%. This is since they went over the same 3-week period last year. A year-over-year analysis shows a 49% drop in violent crime, and Washington had its first 7-day period in recent history without a single homicide. I think they've since had one or two. But crime is down in that, in the District of Columbia, and some of what I've read, and I don't think I printed it, is Roger, while you do see the presence in places, a lot of the presence is also in places where the crime is. So I really don't have a big problem with it. The mayor has kind of been trying to balance it between what the Democrats want her to say and what she wants the people there want her to say.
She's got to get reelected.
Yeah, because the people generally are supportive, and I think the people are pretty supportive, and I think the Democrats are playing into Trump's hand by trying to say he's a bad guy for using the National Guard to try to lower the crime rate in the District of Columbia. I think the people will think that is a good thing.
But, you know, when you start talking about using the military for the, on the home front, that's not what our military is there for.
Well, now, who did Lyndon Johnson send to Alabama in '65?
Well, I think he did send the what you call it, the National Guard,
National Guard.
wasn't it? Anyway.
And
And there are
others have done the
times,
same
that,
thing.
and that's
right,
why,
Little Rock, Arkansas, and all
Yeah.
that. We
and
can
that's
name-
why Trump got to stay in Los Angeles because of that. But I still think having them there on all, and how much money is this costing? Not only are the National Guards coming in from different states, I know somebody said it was $1 million a day. That's
So
a lot of money.
Are you making the argument that we should allow crime to run rampant?
No, I'm not making that
Or
argument.
are you saying these
Wes,
or are you saying
no.
the mayors are not doing their job and they need to step up their game?
I think that
Those
you
are the
need-
two choices on the table.
a choice would be to fund the police
Another
that's there and.
It's
the-
not up to the federal government to fund Shelby Police Department.
No, but there, you can get grants and things like that.
That's federal government funding.
Well,
Another problem in D.C. has been cashless bail for violent criminals.
I agree with that.
That has been a
I agree.
tremendous problem, and that's one of the things the Attorney General Pam Bondi is trying to use the federal authority to put a stop to.
And
it's
explain
not
what
just in
that
Washington,
is.
it's other cities
Well,
as
they
well.
commit a violent crime, they're in jail 3 hours and they're let out, or 3 days and they're let out, and they've committed a violent crime and have no bail. It's
And
cashless.
no incentive to come to court.
It's cashless bail. They don't have to put up a bail. That has happened
And I
in
want to
DC
push
a
back
lot.
on Wes just a little bit. Everybody, both Democrats and Republicans, are in favor of having safe streets. Everybody
Yes.
is against crime.
Yes.
That's not really the issue. The issue is what is the most efficient way to do that and what is the constitutional way to do that. So to oppose one method as opposed to another is not to say that you're against crime. Everybody's against
Well,
crime.
I don't think there's any doubt what Chicago's doing, what Baltimore's doing, what Memphis is doing, name your city,
Right.
isn't working. And people aren't safe.
People don't feel safe.
And this
a lot
comes
of them.
across to the general public is, the Democrats want to keep doing what they're doing, they're not willing to look at options.
that's not true. That's not
That
true.
was my
That may be
point to
your
some
point,
degree when I said
anyway.
Trump's like Brer Rabbit.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
and you know, and this is another example of Trump trying to do something to get the people's minds off of Epstein and the files, and also
Who is
to
Epstein? It's
extend.
been so long since I've heard that
Epstein-
name.
Yeah, I'm sure, and also
it's
to
working, is that
extend
it?
the authority of the president. I mean, you know, we have a balance of power. Well, we'll talk about this more later on, but guys, let's talk about North Carolina. North Carolina budget that has not been passed. What are our legislators saying about it? When will it be passed? How does it affect our school system? Roger?
Well, I know we're running short on time, so I'll make
Okay.
it quick.
Let's make
The-
it
The North
quick.
Carolina House and Senate have one job this session, and that is to produce and pass a budget. That was due July the 1st. Next week is September. They've not done their homework. The state health plan last week was increased with premiums. That means that teachers and other state employees are actually going to be bringing home less money than they did last year. Raleigh, do your homework. It was due 2 months ago. Do your job.
All right, briefly, Wes, what do you think?
Well, my
Have you
health care
talked to 'em?
premiums are going up too. So that's across the board. That's got nothing to do with teachers. Again, teachers have had a raise. Every year Republicans have controlled the General Assembly. I wish we had a fiscally responsible governor, and I think this would move on much more quickly.
All right, Mike, quickly.
Well, we do have a budget. It's just
Correct.
not the budget that should have been changed to make a new budget and account for the inflationary increases. But we'll eventually get a budget, but I can tell you the House is gonna have to give more than the Senate because Berger is dug in on some of the things that he believes are important, especially, and here's a complicating factor, Medicaid funding from the federal government makes our Medicaid expansion automatically go away
That's right.
in 3 years. And how to deal with that is something now that has been added to the mix. And Betsy, it is very, very much an expensive part of the budget if it gets shifted to the state level.
And so we'll talk more about that another time. All right, Mike, let's go to lightning round.
Well, I just briefly want to say that it was a pleasure to come for the opening of this facility yesterday. And I'm grateful for the contribution of Dot Roark, the Roark family, to help make this happen. And I know she's given a significant gift, and there'll be further significant gifts in the future. And so thank you, Dot Roark. Your
Yes.
husband, Les Roark, would be very, very proud of what you've done.
All right, Roger?
Donald Trump's acting director of FEMA is David Richardson. Now, we remember that Trump said he wanted to get rid of FEMA. Richardson took office in May, and a lot of us were worried about his lack of experience in emergency management. At a recent staff meeting, the director of FEMA told his staff that he was not aware that the United States even had a hurricane season. Now, let me say that again. The director of FEMA was unaware that the U.S. had a hurricane season. Betsy, it is frightening when officials in an administration lie, but sometimes when they tell the truth, it scares the crap out of me.
Oh, all right, Wes, what's your lightning round item?
Well, I'm going to discuss the most significant news that no one's discussing. The United States has taken possession of the stock for government grants to companies. This week, Trump listened to and took Bernie Sanders' recommendation and purchased 10% of Intel, this following the June announcement of the U.S. government acquiring the golden shares of U.S. Steel, Nippon Steel. These are troubling steps down a path that will lead to the destruction of capitalism, the system that has lifted more people out of poverty than any other. Unfortunately, Mike, Republicans seem to be buying into the argument. It's time for Republican leaders, activists, and in fact, all Americans to review the Constitution, Economics 101, and consider the history of England or Venezuela, or surely we will suffer the same fate.
Hear, hear.
All right, mine is a different one. The Farmer's Almanac predicts a colder than average winter for North Carolina Appalachian Mountains regions this on the 25-26 winter with increased snowfall. And last year, the last almanac had an 86.1 accuracy rate in the last predictions. So guys, we may be in for more snow this year. And for you all, thank you again for being with us, and we hope that you'll tune in next week for the next edition of Political Smackdown.